If hoisting aloft the standard of their otherness were to mean, however, that the speech patterns in the villages of Quebec would appear unchanged in the mass media and print publications, then that provincial purism would split the French language into two, leaving Quebecois readers unable to use a single piece of writing published in France because it would be a different language. If the meager population of Quebec, I seem to recall that it's 6 million, is it that kind of number? That kind of number, ballpark figure, were to take on the challenge of running everything in their own variety alone, the cost of that undertaking would exceed the budget of collective Quebecois energy. So what they did was mix metropolitan French with some local spice from Quebec and promote this hybrid to the status of elite usability. When we were
question and answer.
I'm sure you don't have 10 minutes for the question.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that you said that Quebec is central to French Canada, but I think you need to know that Quebec is central to French Canada just as France is central to la francophonie, and that Quebec's relationship to the French language of France is much like my relationship as an Acadian is to the French language of Quebec. So I think that your talk is very interesting, in that all the dialects, I think, are within these different relationships, and we always talk about one standard as if there is only one. But I think that the relationships are multiple, and I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how those relationships are actualized in the field. I don't know if it's Bengal or in India, but how could that example of French be transferred to other language communities and standardized languages?
Yeah, that's hegemony within hegemony. Well, in Bengal, you will find that there are regional standard varieties of the language that are already in place in a district like Mymensingh, or a district like Rajshahi, or a district like Kumila, or a district like Philippi. What you get is there is a district standard. And there are, of course, variations around that standard within the district. But then at the level of Dhaka, there is a kind of national summation, if you wish. And there is a vague stereotype of educated Bangladeshi Bangla that is clustered around Dhaka, to which speakers of the regional district standards tend to approximate in certain contexts, which is what makes it possible for stereotypes to arise between East Bengal and West Bengal, those would otherwise be unconstructible. That they're constructible at all is because there is negotiation going on all the time. Now, it could be wonderful if somebody could study the fluidity and answer your question in the detail that's required. That's thicker than any description I know. I haven't seen that done. Maybe it can't be done. But it would be wonderful to have an explanation. Thank you.
Yes, I have one question. Thank you for that brilliant presentation. I also agree with Phyllis. Phyllis just asked you that how can she actually communicate with the Bengali-speaking people without knowing the Bengali?
Right.
Yeah, just for me also, how can I actually communicate with the French people without knowing the French? Okay, so we can actually mingle West Bengalis and our Bengali is fine, because we know each other's language, because we have that dominance over the language. But how can it be actually termed as multilingualism with that French-speaking people and German-speaking people? Mr. Olaf Wollman actually stressed on the culture. And my question is to you, because you already actually mentioned that, how can we actually integrate gender and culture and language? So which actually does hegemony over one? Is it culture which actually takes over language, or is that language which takes over on culture? So could you please give a little bit glimpse on that? Thank you.
Yeah, in response to the part of your question that concerns how to talk to people in Quebec, Dhaka has a wonderful department of French. I suggest that you catch your experts in French and make them mediators in this enterprise. I don't by that mean the usual bureaucratic thing of throw some money at the problem. I'm saying, why don't you encourage the Institute of Modern Languages to have a few PhD students here, make this their PhD topic. You see, if that were to happen, they would then get funding from French Canada to go there and spend a year and do things, because many people there are very anxious to spread the word. There are many missionaries in Laval and other places waiting to catch unsuspecting Bengalis and others. So that there is already interest, it's a matter of using it. Now for gender, that is happening automatically because the overwhelming majority of new faces in humanities departments are women. So that happens anyway, you don't even have to work for that. But they just need to bring this to their consciousness. There are many women who are more macho than me. I mean, they buy into patriarchy in various ways. Sharmila Shrikumar has a brilliant term for them. She called them empirical women. People who happen to be women but who don't understand what is at stake. I love the term empirical women. Ever since Sharmila Shrikumar came up with it.
Yes,
It's a wonderful term.
thank you. The intellectual person can accept that fact, but normally, I mean, who does not understand what is gender, even they don't understand this concept. But how could you make to those people that when we talk about gender equality?
You write in Pratham Alu, you write middles, you write articles on the editorial pages about the things. And you keep doing it until you reach 5 more people, 6 more people. You will not reach 500, you will reach 5. You have to settle for very small audience. Yeah, you need a lot of, I mean, India also has a few but needs more. We need lots of public intellectuals. Pavitra Sharkar is a public intellectual. He writes in dailies. Well, he doesn't write in dailies as much now as he used to 10 years ago. That's because he's older. The point is, you need public intellectuals who are able and willing to write in the daily newspapers and willing to appear on television, willing to talk, right? Exoterically for the public, not just listen. That there is no alternative. That's why I asked a question to Dhanraj Reddy about Nepal. Are there people writing in Nepali about these issues? He said, alas, very few. That's happening all over South Asia. We need more public intellectuals.
Sometimes the case of, well, come back to Europe, Belgium and Switzerland. I think in those cases you have a strong linguistic background beyond the frontier, but on the border. I mean, the Belgian French-speaking can fall back on France or the French-speaking communities there. The Flemish-speaking people in Belgium, they can fall back on Holland and Netherlands, so there's an interaction. Like in Switzerland, I mean, the French-speaking in Geneva and others, they can fall back and get inputs from France. Italians, Italy, and the Germans in Basel or Zurich, they have a strong Germany background there. I think it's a case in point in a certain way that even if you have a linguistic minority abroad, you don't have to invade the country in order to recover these people. Like we have the case in Ukraine and Russia now, and other cases may come up. You have a problem here. It's a geopolitical problem, actually. The thing happening with Ukraine and Russia is also linked to mother language and politics in a way. So it's more a remark I wanted to make, and not particularly a question. But I think the case, the way that the Swiss have organized multilingual education, etc., is quite. It's not an example, a perfect example, but it's interesting. So here also the institute could maybe do more work. The Belgium example is not that good because
they're breaking up. Well,
they may break up because in the French-speaking in Wallonie, they learn and teaching is in French. And there's very little teaching in Dutch or French. And the other way around, in the Flemish areas, they don't learn much French, you see.
Yeah, I noticed on my recent visit to the Swiss-German border that the Swiss contract, which was emblematic of what can be done in such a community, is breaking up because apparently the German canton and the French canton teaching each other's languages is a very old contract that is now breaking down because they're busy teaching English instead. So there is a major problem in Switzerland. The concept, the whole imaginary of Switzerland is dying. Now that becomes important in the context of the remark I was making about the successive models of linguistics corresponding to the folk and the independent nation state and human rights. Structuralism was constructed around the time of the League of Nations. The League of Nations had its headquarters in Geneva. And there was a certain influence of the Swiss notion of federation on the image of what the world could be in future. Now, with Switzerland breaking up, or being on the verge of losing the old contract, I'm not saying the country is breaking up, I'm saying the old idea of Switzerland is breaking up. This is as important a moment, I think, as the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 90s. Now, everybody was talking about Yugoslavia. Notice that I had to travel to Konstanz, Kreuzlingen, to discover this about Switzerland. It is not in the Indian papers, it's not in the American papers. The difficulties between the French and German cantons of Switzerland are not international headlines. Everybody's looking at Kiev instead, or the Islamic State, or other major events. That's why I mentioned the fact that the Quiet Revolution in Canada happened at the same time as Vietnam. Nobody was watching. The rest of us were watching Vietnam, while this was also happening. Language always takes a backseat. We have to get used to the fact that the stuff we do is not in the public limelight. We have to get used to working with less attention. This is a typical session. The audience is very thin, to use the pen and thick description business. We have to get used to thin audiences. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. for that report. And now, Dr. Sadiq Ali, 20 minutes presentation and then 10 minutes question and answer session. Dr. Sadiq Ali.
For the technology to start. First, my humble apology. I'm not a linguistic expert, but the International Mother Language Institute, they have honored me to share my experiences on multilingualism, and I thank them. First, I would like to express my respect towards the martyrs of the language movement. And as Mr. O'Frightley pointed out, that speaking in mother language is a human right. And we do believe in it, and we have become independent in 1971 for that matter. I'm going to talk about state of multilingualism in Bangladesh, and my two prior speakers, they are expert in their field, and they have actually contributed heavily on how this multilingualism and the politics of multilingualism and unilingualism, all those terms, I think we are very clear about it already. So I'm going to talk as a sociologist and touch on the ground reality, and of course Bangladesh is a case in point. But the issues of concern of my presentation is the international background of MLE. I think we all really have known about it. We know a lot about it already. And we are talking about multilingualism. That's why I will turn to the situation of the indigenous people living in Bangladesh, mostly in Chittagong Hill Tracts and plain lands. And they do not have any constitutional right yet to have, and how does it affect the practice of multilingualism in Bangladesh. MLE in context of Bangladesh, how well actually MLE is working in Bangladesh, the ground reality, the challenges and way forward. We already know that UNESCO acknowledged 21st February in 1999 as the Martyr Day as International Mother Language Day. And they have not only acknowledged Bangla as a monopoly language, but recognition of sacrifices the Bangalis made in 1952 and spirit of language movement where people from all ethnic groups participated. We must know, and we have started realizing, though quite late, that not only actually the Bengali Muslims or the Bengali Hindus participated in the liberation war, but irrespective of caste, creed, religion, class, people from all strata actually took part in the liberation war. So we have now started kind of identifying the Adivashi freedom fighters, though it's quite late. It is almost after 30 years we have started that process. We have started identifying the women freedom fighters, and we have started giving them award too. So it signifies law. Signifies the recognition of other languages. Also, it is reinforced by Article 1 of UNESCO Constitution, which says language should not induce any kind of discrimination, but it does. I mean, Mr. I think Rashput, he has pointed out that in the region, particularly in West Bengal and East Bengal, is Bangla, of course. We speak in English, but numerically it is still very low. Of course, we do speak in Hindi too, because we are flooded with all your channels, but you don't get to see our channels. So we are quite fluent in Hindi too, and we watch a lot of dramas and serials and films. But still, we have this hegemony of Bengali on other languages, and hardly we can speak in Chakma. Prashanto is my university friend. I cannot speak his language, but he speaks my language. So this is where you go, that it does bring, or it does carry a lot of discrimination with the dominant language. Similarly, ILO Convention 23, ratified by the government in 1972, emphasizes importance of education in mother tongue. UN Convention Rights of Children, 1989, demands in Article 28(1) for primary education to be compulsory and free. Also, we are encouraged by our poverty reduction strategy paper and 6th five-year plan, which recommended educating ethnic community children. That is out of 150 million in Bangladesh, and they live mostly in the southeastern part of the region, Chittagong Hill Tracts, in Sylhet and North Bengal. 45 indigenous groups, but officially there are only 20 ethnic politics in Bangladesh. They are purposefully, deliberately, majority of the indigenous group have been left out. In the 1950, when the State Acquisition Tenancy Act, it made the Jamindari system not nullified totally. So it also stopped June cultivation in the plains, but in Chittagong. Constitution and indigenous people in Bangladesh, we have a wonderful constitution, but they are yet to have any constitutional recognition, and it has been, since they do not have, these things are not at all addressed. If you look into the mainstream policies, particularly, is totally absent. And land is not only to them means of livelihood, the Adivasi peoples or the indigenous people. I'm using the word. The only clause in the Constitution, 28(1), remotely addresses state, says that state shall not discriminate against any citizens on the ground of Act, named Small Ethnic Group Cultural Institute Act, 2010. Cultural heritage, but, and out of which actually we have this institute, and where we are already, you'd see that it doesn't address economic and political structures and issues of the indigenous people. It only takes the heritage. In addition, our constitution has gone through amendments dozen times, and the latest amendment, the 15 of the tribes, minor races, ethnic sects, and communities. What we notice in the 2010 Act, and as well in the amendment, that neither Article 23A and cultural territories and resources. And it is really related to the level of education they can get, and access to education and other services they are entitled to. Addresses the socio-economic situation of the IPs in the plain is the State Acquisition Tenancy Act 1950, which only prohibits transfer of Aboriginal lands to non-Aboriginals. However, no mention about getting control period. After the British period, they have lost land during Pakistan period, and they are till today. And I was also one of the authors, that shows that the 10 Adivasi communities in the plains lost the market value of these grab lands is Taka 62.7 billion, which is equal to the donors are focusing on that. The plains Adivasis are very, very much, I would say, kind of ignored as well. There are 13 ethno-linguistic groups, ethnic origins, cultural practice. The Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was in power, and the treaty was signed between her government and the Janashamriti Samiti JSS. The CST is quite unique. It has plural administration. It has regional council, which is out of the treaty. It has come and formed 3 linguistic councils, 3 circle chiefs, and civil administration. And they have the CHT regulation 1900, which was formulated during British era, and the 1900 issue. And then train those staffs, at the same time training on IP rights and development, capacity building of young IP rights advocates, facilitate linkage and build capacity of indigenous peoples organizations, and this institute can make links and establish this link with the national level, at the same time regional level and international level institutions, reviews and needs assessment for integration of indigenous peoples' concerns, IP-friendly schools, national history, need to incorporate heritage and culture from IP communities, opening equal opportunity of education for all, media campaign, strengthening coordination among government institutions, advocacy. So at the end, I must say that we need to revisit the policies And we need to go for democratization of knowledge, and we need to, first of all, to change your mindset. With that note, thank you all for your patient hearing.
Thank you. Now, question and answers for 10 minutes. No question? Mr. Tripura? Question?
Thank you very much for your nice presentation regarding IP and other multilinguistic subject. I am Maniklal Boni, Joint Secretary, Hill Tech Ministry. I would like to know regarding execution of peace accord. You have suggested some points, but I think you did not give more emphasis on this point. If we execute peace accord properly, in that case they will be empowered and they will get all sorts of facilities, and they will be give all sorts of problem they can be overcome. If you explain a bit.
I think I can only explain a bit here, because this seminar is not on the PSTC, CST accord. This is on multilingualism, language, etc. But of course the issue of accord is very important, because if you look into the accord, there are 72 provisions. And the government is claiming that they have kind of addressed around 40 or less than 40 provisions, and within which education of course falls. But since you are working within the Ministry of CHT Affairs, you know the ground reality maybe better than me, but I am, as a researcher, I have been working with them for almost 2 decades. And what I see that like certain pockets of the accord has been touched on, not constructively addressed. So this is where you need to address. Like the large number of Adivashi families got displaced. During the insurgents, they went over the border. At the same time, when the Kaptai Lake was built in 60s, 100,000 Adivashis went over the border. When they came back, they didn't get back to their customary owned land. They were further pushed into the hilly areas, and if you go to those remote areas, there is no school, nothing. So that's why not only me, and I think there are a lot of people working with the Adivashis. There is a national level caucus, there is Kapil Foundation, Adivashi, Porishod, Jatiyo Adivashi Forum. Everybody is working very closely with the Ministry of CHT Affairs and to execute the accord constructively.
Any more questions? Yes.
Learning in their own language. I want to draw your attention to another area where Adivashi children are learning in Bengal as an intermediate area, and their teachers are mostly Bengali speakers. Hopefully, or naturally. Do you know what is their attitude towards Adivashi speaking Adivashi language in the classroom?
The Bengali speaking Adivashi?
The Bengali speaking teacher, what is his or her attitude towards Adivashi speaking students using Adivashi language in the classroom or outside? Because I have some experience as a head of a commission using Santali language in Altic script. Because when I was traveling through the districts of West Bengal, I visited many schools. There the Bengali teacher discouraged the use of Santali by the Santali students in the classroom outside. They not so much discouraged in simple terms, but they say, well, you are speaking, what gibberish are you speaking? Are you abusing me in your own language? That kind of talk discouraged the students speaking their own language. That may also happen here. I don't know. Do you have?
No, it is quite common here too, and it's not only in schools, but I teach in the University of Dhaka, and Prashant as well used to teach, but he's no longer teaching. He has been on freelance. But we have colleagues in the universities. who also looks down upon the Adivashi students and as well sees the movement of particularly the movement that took place in CHT as a separatist movement, not as a movement for autonomy. And they kind of misinterpret, and it creates a lot of tension among the students because at the end, the students are all, sitting for the public service exams, and they become government officials, responsible for land officers, revenues, and other magistrates. And so they come out, if they are kind of socialized with these negative, discriminatory attitudes, and when they go to the field, they behave differently. But there are also teachers like me and others who try to do the reverse. And so this is where actually we have a lot of tension, but we are still working. We have to go ahead with our agendas. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question.
One thing I would like to, it reminds me that Mr. Shantul Arma, the Janashambhati leader, was my student at MA class. And his Bengali is much better than his fellow Bengali students, and particularly those from Chittagong. I found that the Chakmas are mostly bilingual, and their Bengali is better than that of the Chittagongians who speaks in dialects. Just a passing remark. Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Have the question? Time is over. It's only for 10 minutes. Short question.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. It is well taught. The Chittagong Hittites and the other parts of the country. We know as much as 13 languages are in Chittagong Hittites, are talking on, and the almost 60 are outside of the CST. But we are concerned about CST because our CST ministry is dealing with that. Language is not only the language at all. I will tell. Language is a profession. Language is the livelihoods. Language is everything for our everyday activities. As these areas, population is not much. Professionally, it is not so viable even. Our livelihood comes from our education and other parts. But as the size of the population of the CST is not much big, that is why only the government is eagerly trying to develop their language and the others as the demand of the country and the demand of the people also. That on the
So I take it as your opinion.
Yes.
So I think we have to be generous to give other speakers.
Yes. So we will be happy if the other parts of the developing agencies come up to make them eager in their other language, their own language development. That could be the accelerated our process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this session is now Mr. Dr. Shantu Tripura.
Honorable Chair, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and privilege for me to be sharing my reflections and experiences on the topic that I understood was what we were talking on, multilingualism. Just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, as my friend Sadeka mentioned, I used to teach at a university, but it's not that I have given up teaching completely. I'm still teaching. Again, I'm back into teaching. I teach part-time at RAC University, and it so happens that one of the courses I teach there in the anthropology program, bachelor's program, is language, society, and culture. So I have had the opportunity to think about some of the issues just to help my students. So anyway, but as a Bangladeshi, I grew up in Chittagong Hill Tracts, one of the regions that Sadeka was talking about, and I'm ethnically Tripura, so Tripura is my first language. I also speak Bangla. I mean, I learned to speak maybe at a later age than average Bengali child, but I did pick up Bangla, and I'm quite fluent in Bangla. I'm okay with English, and I also speak another language, Chakma. So maybe this is something I just thought about a little bit that I will talk you through. Some common misconceptions and notions about language varieties in Bangladesh. This more as I research, as I teach, the kind of misconceptions that we encounter, especially in Bangladesh, which happens to be a country where people take a lot of pride in the language movement and so on. But it is more like a religious attitude to language rather than a proper, let's say what you like, social, scientific, or detached historical. I mean, Bengalis love to think they are unique people, the only people, which if you tell them they are not perhaps that unique, they might actually be very offended. So I'll not get into that too much. Also the extent, types, and context of multilingualism in Bangladesh, I'll talk a little bit about the way I see it. And Sadeka has covered the ground already to some extent, but I'll go over a little bit about the legislative and policy context, whether multilingualism is supported, if so, to what extent, and so on, and some concluding thoughts. This has been already said.